Good morning. My name is Tim Chen. I'm the chair of the Aid Northwest Board of Directors. With me today, we're privileged to have Caitlin Wasley, who is from the Refugee Women's Alliance, and Deborah Cruz and Natalie Guzman, who's our director. Yeah, she'll take care of, make sure we're all on track. I would like to let everybody know, if you don't know already, Deborah has accepted the position of Executive Director for Aid Northwest. She will start October 1st. We are actively recruiting for a program manager who will replace Deborah and do all the things that she does. We have other duties for new ED and her ED position. The program manager, from my personal perspective, has to be someone who is very good at supervising just 250 cat-like volunteers. I do think we all, want to do the same thing, is just keeping everybody moving in sort of the same direction, which is always a treat, especially when you have volunteers who can vote with their feet and decide to do something else. Anyway, so Caitlin has a presentation, and I think we should just go to it. Refugees Women's Alliance provides refugees and immigrants in the Puget Sound area with services to help them become independent. Caitlin will tell a little bit more about that. She has been in the Pacific Northwest for a long time. She formerly was with World Relief and now is the development manager for Women's Refugees Alliance. Okay, Caitlin, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Tim. I am very happy to be with you all today, and I am going to now attempt to share my screen. So everyone, please cross your fingers, and we are going to see how well this works. So bear with me, please. All right, now give me some feedback. How does that screen look for you all, for what you can see? Looks good? All right, then let's get started here. So again, thanks so much for having me here. I've had the pleasure of working with Deb for quite some time at World Relief. I was there for many, many years and was the director of resettlement services. And during that time, Deb and I actually got to go on a tour of the facility in Tacoma, the detention center, or the now, of course, called the ICE Processing Center. Aid Northwest is an organization very close to my heart. I am a big fan of everything that you all do, and am super excited to be here to talk about Refugee Women's Alliance. We also go by ReWA as our little acronym there. So that is another way you can hear us referred to in the community. But I'm very happy to get to share with you all today. So I'll start by talking a little bit about our history and our mission. So in 1985, we had a small group of resettled refugee women who recognized that the needs of their communities of refugee and immigrant women in Seattle were being really overlooked by the social services sector in the area. And so in response, they founded the Southeast Asian Women's Alliance. And this provided newly arrived women with services in their native languages that were simply not available at other agencies. So from this small group of women who got things done and made it happen, we have grown to be quite a sizable organization in South Seattle, having offices also in Kent and in SeaTac, and other childcare centers available on Beacon Hill in South Seattle and in Lake City. So we've got quite a lot going on across the Puget Sound area. And we also serve immigrants and refugees from all over the globe and from all genders. So we do not just work with refugee women specifically, even though that's what our name is. We have 150 staff approximately that speak about 52 languages and dialects. So there's very rich language capacity in our organization. And I would say that we are really a leader in case management and advocacy for survivors of domestic violence in particular, as well as being a leader in Seattle's early learning community for refugee and immigrant students. And we also provide quality childcare and preschool programs, as I mentioned before. So to kind of sum up, we are a nonprofit, a multi-ethnic organization rooted in that multi-ethnic background. We promote inclusion, independence, personal leadership, and strong communities by providing refugee and immigrant women with culturally and linguistically appropriate services. I really think that that's the main distinction that ReWA offers, this rich language capacity among our staff. And on kind of the wider scale, more of the vision side of things, we are interested in social justice and public policy changes, equal access to services for refugee women and their families, and also respecting cultural values and the right to self-determination. I think that that is something that comes up when the organization is really rooted in the communities that the organization serves. Now, you all probably know well, and perhaps even better than I, what the challenges are for refugees and immigrants in our community. I'm not going to go one by one through this list on this slide. You all know it just as well, if not better than I do, but we do have a very interesting region here in the Pacific Northwest in the Puget Sound that is, on the surface at least, very welcoming community. And there's a significant foreign-born population in this area. And we know that in the past year in particular, we've had thousands of newcomers coming in from Afghanistan and from Ukraine, in particular from those crises. It's been a very strange last 12 months in this field. And this has really resulted in a big increase in demand for various social services that people need when they're new to the area. Education, housing, behavioral health services, just to name a few. We know that housing is a big, big issue in the Seattle-Tacoma area. That's no secret to anyone. There's a lot of inequity in this region as well. So with those things combined, the increasing housing costs, the inequities, it is common for refugees and immigrants to struggle to maintain housing stability. And many are at risk of homelessness. Maybe they end up stuck in entry-level jobs because of their limited English skills they might have, living paycheck to paycheck, really having no margin to dream about the future and get things done for the next generation as well. It's a difficult place to be, and it's of course not the same story for everyone. I want to also stress that as well. But what we really want to see at ReWA is people feeling like they are a part of their community, that they're creating meaningful relationships, that they're participating in civil society, and that they have the capacity to do those things and feel good, feel healthy, and feel like their family is well taken care of. So at ReWA, we are serving a majority of people who are low income. And approximately 60% of people in our programs are women. That's largely also due to having a strong domestic violence advocacy program. But everyone who comes through our doors has experienced the challenge of leaving their homeland and rebuilding their life in the US. That's one thing we can say across the board. Of course, many of the people that we serve are also BIPOC. And so this means that in addition to having the identity as a refugee or immigrant, they're also navigating really danger, oppression, injustice faced by communities of color in the United States. And at the same time, they're going to have a lack of citizenship by definition. If they're newcomers, refugees, or immigrants, they will not have that protection that comes with being a citizen of the United States. So there's a lot going on for newcomers. And you all know this, of course, very well, especially with Aid Northwest and the different statuses, immigration statuses of people coming out of the detention center. There are so many needs and often very few services available for people with the particular immigration statuses that come out of the detention center. So while this region is, like, I would say, generally welcoming of newcomers, I really believe, and ReWA believes, that culturally and linguistically responsible and appropriate services for immigrants and refugees are needed to support people in the best way possible as they're getting settled here in the US and in specifically the Puget Sound. So that's really kind of the niche that ReWA fills, is having people who look like them delivering the services, who can meet them and say, I know exactly what you mean because I am from your culture and I can understand this situation. Much better than, for example, I could as a white woman who's native born in the US. So that is, yeah, that's what I wanted to share about those things. So the core of ReWA's work is walking alongside immigrants and refugees, getting more specific into what we actually do day to day. We are helping them meet their immediate needs, achieve their goals, and gain long-term economic, social, educational, and housing stability. These are the main kind of facets of what we do. And so we're very interested in a strengths-based case management approach, as well as helping newcomers identify the root causes of the challenges that they face so that we can work together to find solutions for them. So because of our rich language capacity and cultural capacity, we do pair program participants with case managers, with job developers, mental health counselors, other program staff who speak their primary language and are from their culture. So for example, we have one of the programs we have is our Center for Social Emotional Wellbeing. We are very proud to have the only local behavioral health, mental health center staffed entirely with immigrant and refugee counselors. As far as we know, we're the only one doing that and offering that in the area. 85% of ReWA's staff are immigrants or refugees or the children thereof as well. So really the staff is very well informed about the community's needs, strengths, priorities, what projects they want to see happen, and are really best poised to be offering these services. So we are very happy and proud to be a part of this community and being very community-led, an organization that's truly from the community and for the community. So we are no longer a small agency. We have a whole lot going on, and we have a lot of programs that we offer, a lot of services within those programs that we have going on. And we have those 3 locations in South Seattle, in SeaTac, and in Kent. And so some of these services are offered in all 3 locations, some in just 2, some just in 1. So if anything that I talk about raises a flag for you and you think, oh, I want to know more about that, you can feel free to reach out to me via email, or of course, just call our general phone number and talk to the receptionist who can tell you, oh yes, this service is offered only in Kent, for example. But some examples of the things that we have going on are, of course, English language education classes. So helping people to improve their English skills. And we have 3 levels of job readiness focused English classes that are provided several days a week to upwards of 100 students annually. And these are adult language students. We do have classes that are both in person on site and offered remotely. So that is a nice option for folks who can't physically get to an office easily. We also have employment and vocational training, and I would add to this career coaching, really. So we have over 500 job seekers per year working with us to find jobs. Some of these are within the Seattle area itself, and some are further out. But I would say the majority of folks in our employment program are working out of our SeaTac office. So that's kind of the hub for employment for us. And the employment staff provide job counseling. They provide employment readiness classes for people to understand about workplace expectations in the United States. There's job training opportunities, and there's job placement for those kind of first jobs that people need to be able to get the bills paid and get things going when they're new to the country or new to the area here. But we additionally provide career coaching and long-term career options for folks. We have a program that's specifically designed for people who have professional training in their background. before coming to the US. And so they can work with us, and we have a program that will actually get them set up with the things that they need while they are doing what they need to do to get recertified to do whatever professional field they are in. This is actually a pretty unique program that is privately funded. So we've got a lot of flexibility with who we can enroll in the program, which is really exciting. But it is, it's a pretty cool program. I've been learning more about it. And I don't know, Tim, if you mentioned that I've only been at ReWA for a few months, but this is one of the things that I think is really exciting about the things that we're doing, that we can help people with some rent assistance to cover their bills while they're getting, while they're working on their career path and getting back to their fields. Here in the US, we also have a healthcare training program as well. And so in healthcare career advancement, we can train people to become certified home care aides. And then from there, because that's kind of considered an entry-level job, once you get through the course, you get the certification, you can work as a home care aide. But from there, there's a lot of other opportunities in the healthcare field that exist. And so we also have a career coach who works with people who graduated from our home care aide program, and they can explore other avenues while they're working in a home care aide job to maybe become a medical assistant or a certified nursing assistant, or some other job in the medical field, so that they can earn more money and bump up their income with a higher level skilled job. And that program actually goes all the way from entry level all the way to being a registered nurse, like with a bachelor's degree. So we can stick with people for years through this program to help them get back into the healthcare field if they have that background, or to explore it as a new avenue for their career. So I think that's also pretty cool. We have a large domestic violence and sexual assault advocacy and counseling program for people who have survived those things. We actually annually support over 700 survivors, and that looks like counseling, individual case management, legal support as well. We do have a family law lawyer on staff who can help people who've experienced domestic violence navigate the next steps for them legally, whether that looks like going through a divorce potentially and then coming up with a parenting plan, whether it looks like a protection order that needs to be filed. So we have a gamut of services for people who are experiencing this situation, and it pairs very well with our housing and homelessness prevention space as well, since people who are fleeing domestic violence often take a bag and run out of the house, right? So they don't have a place to stay often. And so what we can do is help them navigate initial shelter and then long-term housing as well. And we do have some funding to be able to pay for rent for some amount of time while they are getting settled and getting back on their feet after that horrible experience. So we also have housing and homelessness prevention for people who are not experiencing domestic violence as well. So any refugee or immigrant who is struggling with paying for housing, as so many do in this economy here locally, we do have some resources available for them. The qualifications very much depend on various criteria, such as, unfortunately, immigration status, because a lot of this money is public money that's coming for our housing and homelessness prevention program. So long-term vision is to have more flexibility in this program to be able to help anyone out, regardless of immigration status, but there are some restrictions right now on that. But we do have lots of case managers who focus specifically on housing, or experts on where the best places are to put people and where are the apartment buildings where they're willing to work with us so that people can get placed and rapidly rehoused if they're struggling with that. We do also have our early learning centers, and these are for the littlest kids. They're childcare programs as well as preschool programs in South Seattle and in Beacon Hill and in Lake City right now. We are looking to open a couple more centers. So ideally by 2025, we actually think we might double in size and have 6 early learning centers is the hope. We're making plans. So we are providing licensed, accredited childcare to the community, and it's not just refugees and immigrants who can participate in this, it's anyone in the community. So we are solving a problem for everybody here with childcare being so strained in this area. And the program itself offers full-time dual language programming as well to over, right now, 200 infants and children. And we're hoping that that will be more like 400 a few years from now. And I can say from my own experience, my child is actually in childcare with ReWA at our South Seattle location. And so it has been really fun to see up close and personal what that experience is like for him. There is a lot of care that the teachers provide to the kids, developmental screenings that they're checking in on, and then case management as well that's provided to families who are struggling in any sort of way, or families where the kid has been flagged for potentially a developmental delay or behavioral issue coming up. So there's just a lot of walking alongside people and a ton of language capacity in the early learning side of things. So every classroom has a bilingual component too. So they have a specific language chosen for each classroom and they get to study in that language as well, which is very fun. We also have naturalization and immigration services as well. And so this helps people to obtain citizenship, to obtain their green card if they're eligible, and as well some other immigration services such as applying to bring a family member to the US and other things like that. We do not currently work with within the detention center at the moment, but we are working on asylum cases for Afghans and Ukrainians, since those populations have had a huge surge in demand as people have been coming in, and Afghans who need to switch their status from that initial parole status that they received coming into the US. So yeah, we're working on that, but that is like being at the bottom of a giant mountain of work, as I'm sure you all also are familiar with. And we have about 275 people that we serve with immigration services. I'm imagining that over the next year, that number will be a lot higher because we've hired quite a few attorneys and immigration staff to help address these needs in the Afghan and Ukrainian community in particular. We have the Licensed Behavioral Health Program, the Center for Social Emotional Learning as well, which I did mention earlier, that's fully staffed by immigrant and refugee counselors. And we are building up within that a training program as well, so that immigrants and refugees who are new can be trained to become counselors for their own communities. We have lastly a youth program as well. This is after school and out of school time programming. So throughout the summer and on the weekends and actually after school, that focuses on science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And we've got about 100 students who participate in that each year. And they have this enrichment programming and other activities that they do. It's a lot of fun to see the kids around in the South Seattle office. We also have post-secondary navigation support for young people age 16 to 24. So we have a couple of career counselors, career and college counselors on staff from refugee communities who go out they're never in the office. They're always out. They are out in the community doing outreach at schools and at religious centers and other spaces to find people in this age group who are wanting to advance their career, specifically with further education. And so they are experts in FAFSA and in all of the colleges in the area and where to go and what to do and how to help navigate that space of getting into college in order to advance education. So that's a pretty exciting program that I also am a big fan of. So I think that is largely what we do. You can see that it is quite a lot. We've got a lot going on. ReWA also is very committed to providing as many services as we can to people in one place so that people don't have to deal with the struggles of going back and forth. Of course, someone who is maybe not housed, who is fleeing domestic violence, there's a lot of stress in that space. So having to go and shuffle between different agencies for services really is not practical, and it is not a very kind way to offer services. So we do try to offer as much as we can to people in one place and try to be that one-stop shop for folks. And numbers wise, we serve about 3,000 households, 12,000 people annually. That gives you a little bit of the scale as well. All right, now we have, yeah, I already did mention, I think, that not all folks leaving immigration detention are going to qualify for every service we offer. So I'm telling you about all these wonderful things that we have going on, and also knowing and wanting to acknowledge that people who you might be working with at Aid Northwest may not actually be able to access these services that we have, either because of their status or because of maybe even the physical location. Because I know your offices are down in Tacoma. The detention center, of course, is down in the Tacoma Tide Flats. So there are some limitations there, but it is always good to reach out. So I really do encourage you to reach out if you heard something that you think would be a good fit for someone that you work with. Please let me know, and we can always explore. There's always exceptions to be found. So you never know until you ask. So please do reach out when you can. ReWA really shines, I think, in a few areas as well, because there's a lot of immigrant and refugee serving organizations in this area, and a lot of them offer similar services, English, employment, and those basic things. So I really want to also stress like how ReWA is different in having, one, the language capacity and the specific services for domestic violence survivors. That is a big thing to remember when you think about ReWA. Please think about us if you have someone who is working, who you're working with, who is surviving domestic violence. We can provide counselors who can help them get out of the situation or help them pick up the pieces and do next steps after they're out of a dangerous situation like that. As well, I think that ReWA is pretty specific in really focusing on people's every step of their journey. So it's not just about initial resettlement and meeting only basic needs. We definitely do that, but we also want to help people over the course of the years that they're here, and help them get connected to the things that they want to get connected to. And we're very interested in developing talent within refugee and immigrant communities. So some examples of that look like in our behavioral health program, having a specific program to train people up into becoming counselors themselves and having them get work experience while they're doing that sort of training. So that is a pretty unique thing that others are not really offering. And it's a huge need for the Seattle area specifically as well, to have more mental health counselors who are trained from immigrant and refugee communities who have the cultural and linguistic background. As well, in our early learning programs, we also provide significant training for the teachers who are running our childcare and preschool classrooms, so that they are really able and like cultivated to step up into positions with more and more and more responsibility. So I think that's another kind of distinctive thing about ReWA, is that we are not just interested in, you know, the first year that someone's here or making sure that people have what they need for just their basic needs, but it's truly about, okay, yes, let's do that. And then let's also plan for the next step and see where you're going to be 5 or 10 years from now. So we really play the long game at ReWA, which I really appreciate. And you can see some of this in these two quotes from Clara and Lily, that Clara's story as a domestic violence survivor. She became homeless when she fled her husband and then got some initial basic needs covered from ReWA. And then within that, we also worked with her to get her into long-term housing and then into a job that worked for her with transportation needs. And then Lily was someone who had a professional background before coming to the US. But then her first job in the US, of course, had really nothing to do with her professional background. She ended up working as a custodian. But then after stabilizing her family, she was able to, with career coaches' help, get into an associate's program and then now works as a full-time accountant. And so she was able to get some initial basic assistance and also grow and get back into her field as well. So I think that is a pretty cool story and example of what we do at Refugee Women's Alliance. So of course, there's always a how to help slide as part of our development team as the grants manager here. I'm sure that my boss would be very unhappy if I didn't share something like this with you all. So of course, one way to follow along is to join our email list and to follow on social media if you are so inclined. We have some volunteer opportunities. Those have really declined with the pandemic. So a lot of them are remote still for various classes that take place primarily remotely these days. And then advocacy is always a need. And of course at Aid Northwest, you understand that very well. There is a lot to be done in terms of immigration reform in this country. Some needs to make sure that DACA sticks around and can help many people stay in the US legally and access the things that they should have access to. And as well as funding for resettlement programs that are shorter term and long term, more like maybe inclusion programs, we could call them. We do accept some in-kind donations. The list is pretty short and I've linked to it here on this slide. So I'm assuming that there's probably a way I can send out the slides to you, Deb, and you might be able to share them with your list. But yeah, so we do accept some donations. We don't accept clothing. So this is what I have to share with you today. So please let me know your questions. And if you have questions after the presentation today, you can absolutely reach out to me via email or at our main phone number listed below. So thank you so much and would love to hear your questions.
We do have one question from Deborah.
Great.
Which immigrant statuses can you help with housing?
With housing, this is something that I actually don't know the details of since I'm, again, newer into the organization. But I do know that there are various restrictions and various funding streams that we're using to support our housing program. So there's absolutely some federal money. So of course, federal money, it's going to be restricted to people who have refugee status, who have asylee status, primarily, which is, I realize, pretty limiting. There are other funding streams. I think we have county money as well in there. So yeah, I would need to go back to our housing program and ask for kind of the specifics. And I'd say, again, if you're working with someone specifically, who is in need of housing, which I realize at Aid Northwest, it's like a lot of people who are coming out of the detention center fall into that category, a lot who are asylum seekers, who maybe don't have their employment authorization yet. It's a really, really sticky situation, a very vulnerable, sticky situation. So I would say if you're working with someone who is in need, reach out and we will see what they might be able to fit into.
Caitlin, when you, I think you're talking about, if I understand correctly, some of your clients, you're talking about working with them for years, literally. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
That's pretty impressive. Wow. I'm very impressed.
Yeah. Yeah, it is wonderful. And it's really, I think that is very much rooted in our founding as being a refugee women-led organization and founded organization who is responding to the needs of their community. And they saw that people need basic needs met. They need help fleeing a domestic violence situation, for example, but that they then also have hopes and dreams for themselves and their families and their kids. And they wanted to help other refugee and immigrant women obtain those dreams and make them happen, make them come to fruition. And so I think that has really informed what we've done and what we've built over the years.
Would it be correct to say that because of the source of your funding, most of your people your clients are in this country, let's say, use the word legally?
Yeah, so I would say that we do have significant funds that are federal. So that,
Right.
yes, limits, yep, you're talking about refugee status and asylee,
Right.
you know, letter in hand, they were granted asylum,
Okay.
more than other statuses for that money specifically. But there's a lot of funding streams going on. So yeah, I would say that probably the majority of people that we are working with do have either refugee or asylee status in hand, or other immigration statuses that maybe they came a diversity visa or something else.
Right.
But yeah, so we don't work as much with asylum seekers or with people who are undocumented, but we do in some instances. Yeah. So
I hate to be the only one, Tommy.
It's tricky.
Yeah, yeah. Do you? I guess I'm. Only thing I know about the folks from Afghanistan and from Ukraine is that they were granted entry to the country on a very temporary status, and then there's some other process from there in order to get them either asylum or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. So both Afghans and Ukrainians are able to apply for parole upon entering the U.S. And it's kind of a special parole category. It's different than parole out of the detention center.
Right.
And I'll say this also, I do not have a legal background.
Okay.
So what I am saying is not in any way legal advice,
right,
or should be thought of as such. But in my understanding, the way it's worked is that Ukrainians and Afghans can have parolee status once they arrive to the U.S. From these two situations of course, the U.S. pullout and Taliban takeover in Afghanistan and the war with Russia and Ukraine. And so there are some restrictions over like what happens next. So parole is a temporary status. So they would need to adjust their status one way or another by the time that deadline comes up in order to stay legally in the U.S. There is temporary protected status is another official category that they can apply for. So they could have parole and then they apply for TPS status, which allows them to stay in the U.S. but does not provide a pathway to citizenship ultimately. Then asylum is another option for them. There's no sort of really exceptions within the asylum system that like expedites their cases as far as I'm aware. They're just getting into the asylum queue, which is not really a queue, but getting into the queue just like anyone else would from any other nation. So it's the same ginormous application, very high burden of proof on them to prove that they have escaped persecution and have a well-founded fear. And so that is kind of the giant, massive mountain I referred to earlier, is that there's so many people who are new because Afghans and Ukrainians have lived in the Puget Sound area for so long. And this is a chosen community. People want to come here because they have relatives here who have been established for 10, 20 years even. So why wouldn't you want to come stay with your aunt and uncle, for example, who's already well established here? So people are coming here to the Seattle area specifically. And as a result, the immigration system is just very overwhelmed because each asylum application is really intensive and really long. And it's, not a high return on investment from the lawyer's perspective. So I would say it's a crisis in the immigration system right now for the area. Now, one thing that is a hopeful light at the end of the tunnel is the Afghan Adjustment Act. So in terms of advocacy, please take a look at this. And in our area, of course, our representatives are pretty into this, into supporting this act, but the Afghan Adjustment Act would actually allow a permanent pathway to citizenship for Afghans who came in as a part of Operation Allies Welcome. So take a look at that. It's kind of stalled in Congress from what I understand right now, but yeah, it's something that it's good to be vocal about supporting, because it's just a very obvious solution that would then take the burden off of the immigration services system.
We have another question from Deborah, and it's, do your attorneys primarily help Ukrainians and Afghans?
So the attorneys who are able to work on asylum applications, I believe, are prioritizing Afghan and Ukrainian cases, from what I understand. And again, grain of salt with all of this, because I am still new to ReWA, only a few months in. However, in our immigration services in general, so things that are not applying for asylum, it's anybody. Anyone who is in need of immigration services can come to us, and we will help with, for example, a naturalization application, green card, and then often for folks who want to bring family members to the U.S. for reunification programs as well.
I have a question. Which of your services do undocumented people qualify for?
Yeah, and this is something that I thought about this morning as like, oh gosh, I should probably have an answer to this question because it's very relevant for Aid Northwest. I do not actually know from our list of services. And on that, I will blame my own ignorance as a new staff member here. But we do have some folks who are undocumented in our programs. I do believe that our domestic violence program can serve people who are undocumented. That's one thing that I do know.
So if we have questions after, like you said, we could send you an email and just ask those questions and then find out the answers.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Natalie, you can send that question to her.
Okay.
I'm really impressed with the fact that you guys have people that are immigrants working in your organization, and we're really lucky to have a host coordinator who walked through our, the whole thing, walked all the way from Nicaragua, and so now he's in our house, and he can relate to the people coming through there, and really, be a good coach for them and things. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I'm very impressed that you have those services.
Yep, it's one thing that I've admired about ReWA for a very long time before joining the organization. There's really no substitute for lived experience.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, are there any other questions from the audience? I hate to dominate this. Do you see anything, Natalie?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Caitlin. Wow. I'm very impressed. Sort of makes what we do kind of just a minor element in the whole thing, but it's
we've all got to be in it working together, right? Like that's the game, right? So yeah, we definitely need Aid Northwest out there welcoming people as they're released.
Yeah.
That's an essential service.
Well, it's kind of interesting that I would say 95% of the folks that come out are men, and whereas you're the flip side, you have a large population of women, and I think it's probably the source, where it's come from. But we certainly want to continue our relationship and coordination, and I think that that's important to provide for all of these folks who are, for one reason or another, have decided to leave their home, friends, family for something better. It got to be desperate. Okay, well, if there are no other questions or comments, thank you, Caitlin. I greatly appreciate it. I know you're, well, the advantage of working remotely is that you and Anderson Island can road into us. All right, everybody. Don't forget, we're trying to recruit for a new program manager. If you know anybody, please ask them to send a CV or a cover letter to our office, and we will gladly review that. Thank you very much, and really appreciate it. We will post this recording on our websites for future review. Thank you, Caitlin. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye. Thank you.